us immediately ready already now in order that we can make the roundup together with you already. Please, Jo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much to the organisers for inviting me to speak today on achieving a sustainable food system. We've already heard a lot about the urgent need to improve the welfare of farm animals, but to really achieve a truly sustainable food system, it's crucial to recognise that it's not just a case of treating farm animals better. We also need to start keeping far, far fewer of them. And this necessarily means shifting to a more plant-based diet. Just a couple of weeks ago, the IPCC issued a stark warning that we're likely to miss the key goal of avoiding a global temperature rise of above 1.3 degrees centigrade. Urgent action is needed to secure a livable and sustainable future for all humanity. Lest we not forget, in the EU alone, agriculture is responsible for just over 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, and nearly 70% of these are from the animal agriculture sector. Nitrogen emissions from animal agriculture, such as ammonia, nitrogen oxide, and nitrous oxides, also pose a significant threat to biodiversity and human health. The simplest and most sustainable way of reducing these emissions is to significantly reduce farm animal numbers. This is, however, a message that not everyone really wants to hear. In the Netherlands, my home country, for example, a High Court ruling on the government's consistent failure to act to reduce excessive nitrogen emissions has forced politicians to acknowledge that not only they need to radically cut livestock numbers, but that the compulsory purchase of farms may also be needed. The Dutch government has been sitting on a powder keg for many years, but rather than risk the wrath of the farming lobby, they have instead looked mainly to technological fixes, innovation, to tackle the emissions problem, and, most importantly, to carry on with business as usual. Yet, innovation, while potentially helpful, should not be viewed as a panacea. Indeed, precision livestock farming, for example, could actually facilitate intensive animal production systems that are inherently designed to overproduce. Likewise, using innovative feed additives may well help to reduce enteric methane emissions from cattle, but such solutions ultimately only serve to maintain the status quo, rather than to engender the systemic change that's needed in our food system and diets. It's actually quite perverse that the Commission is considering including such feed additives in the list of agricultural practices supported by the new schemes. The taxpayer will end up funding farmers to use these products instead of helping them to transition to more sustainable activities. Such innovative strategies are akin to sticking a plaster over a gaping wound. The fact remains that the current levels of both production and consumption of animal products in the EU is completely unsustainable. We cannot carry on with business as usual. It's important here to also consider the true cost of eating animals. I've already mentioned greenhouse gas emissions and nitrogen, but what about the conversion of energy and protein in animal feed into edible calories and proteins? This is incredibly inefficient. For instance, to produce 1 kilo of beef, we need around 25 kilograms of animal feed. Worse still, most of the materials such as soya, which we use to feed the farm animals, are imported to Europe from places such as South America. Yet feed crop production plays a significant role in land degradation, including deforestation, and is a contributor to both climate change and biodiversity loss. Cattle are usually the focus of the debate of the environmental impact of animal agriculture. So it's often suggested that we should instead be consuming more chicken. Well, from an animal welfare perspective, that's already a pretty bad idea. But let's for 1 second just consider how inefficient it is to feed cereals to chickens. An average of 4,325 litres of water is needed to just produce 1 kilo of chicken, whereas less half of that is needed to produce 1 kilo of cereals. This is a remarkably inefficient use of plant-based proteins. Rather than feeding these to farm animals, such crops could be used more efficiently to feed people. And if we don't do it for the climate, if we don't do it for environment or animal welfare, we should also be considering transitioning to a more plant-based diet to benefit our own health. Indeed, many of the non-communicable diseases plaguing our society today, such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, can be prevented, treated, and in some cases even reversed by eating a plant-based diet. We seriously need to curb our appetite for meat and other animal products in the EU. Yet the mere mention of plant-based diets seems to send many politicians, not the ones in this room I have to say, and certainly the agriculture lobby, into complete apoplexy. Some MEPs have been particularly rabid in their attempts to remove any mention of the necessity for dietary transition from parliamentary reports. Their actions range from trying to ban the use of meat denominations for vegan products through to resisting the inclusion of plant-based alternatives in the school milk scheme. To me, this reflects the primacy of the animal agriculture industry in the discourse around food and farming in the EU and the strong desire to protect the status quo, irrespective of the urgent need for dietary transformation that is underpinned by science. I could talk about all of this until the cows come home, but obviously I can't. I'm already, I guess, over time. So let me just conclude by making a couple of very brief points. Firstly, to achieve more sustainable diets, we need to stop incentivizing and promoting the consumption of animal products and instead make fruits, vegetables, and legumes more affordable and attractive to consumers. Secondly, we also need to find ways of stimulating farmers to transition to non-animal forms of agricultural production, not only to reduce animal numbers, but also to increase the supply of homegrown crops and support the protein transition. Perhaps, therefore, when we're encouraging farmers to transition to high animal welfare production systems, we also need to present them with an additional possibility. That is, using the eco-schemes under the Common Agricultural Policy to help them make the shift from intensive animal production to, for example, agroecological crop production. After all, the future of food really is, or should be at least, plant-based. Thank you very much.